Welcome back to Rolando Estocada. My name is Rolando, and for today's episode, it is my absolute pleasure to be able to share with you my custom Bagwell Bowie collection. And I share this with you, one, partly out of request, but also to be able to share with you some of the important features of owning a custom Bagwell, the whys, the hows, more importantly, to share some of the insights that Mr. Bagwell had as far as not only being a knife maker, but also a practitioner and instructor of Bowie Knife Combatives. The collection here is 3 customs, but I have a bit of a surprise for everybody here. I also have 3 Ontarios, and Bill Bagwell had a deal, a collaborative deal with Ontario Knife Company so that they could produce his Bagwell knives, if I'm not mistaken, in the late 90s and early 2000s. And Ontario Knife Company, as of last year, recently folded. So it is regrettable that it's going to be very difficult to acquire a custom Bagwell because Mr. Bagwell passed away in 2021, and also Ontario Knife Company is no longer around. So your best bet is to hunt around on any knife forums or any eBay. If you're lucky, you might be able to get an Ontario Bagwell. It's gonna be marked up pretty heavily, but regardless of that, that's what I'm going to be showing today. When I first spoke to Mr. Bagwell in 2003, I asked him for something very unique, probably something he had never made before. I asked him for a righty and lefty custom Bagwell set. And I explained to him that I'm a Filipino martial artist, but I was also studying Bowie Combatives. So studying Bowie Combatives, I wanted to understand the relationship between Bowie Combatives and Filipino martial arts as a template, not as styles, but as templates. So when I first spoke to him about it, he said he asked for a hand drawing of my hand so that he could understand what kind of torque my hip could deliver. And so what we have here right now are custom righty, lefty Bill Bagwell Bowie knives. And when I say this, that these Bowie knives are very unique, he created these two so that by pure tactile feel, I would know which one was the right and the left. This is a very unique feature that he came up with. So first and foremost, they are both in the dog bone style, and he did something very unique with them. And in his words he added a detail to it that in his words were a bugger to make, are these pins that are right at the bottom of it. But what makes it so unique is the fact that by tactile feel, he designed it so that I pick up the right and the left, and I will know which one belongs to the right and which one belongs to the left. If I switch it in any way, it's not going to feel natural. When he first proposed this to me, I was absolutely stunned by what he was saying. But we had an interesting conversation about it. He said that it's going to be designed differently, number one, because your capabilities between right and left is going to be a little different. But he went further. He said that if you work with a custom tailor, someone's shoulder is always going to be, it's going to have a shoulder drop. You're always going to have one shoulder dropping. So just because of that one little detail in your anatomy, it's probably going to be about a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch drop on average for most individuals. Your left hand Bowie is going to feel different and should feel different to your right hand Bowie. So I'm going to first share with you the right hand Bagwell Bowie, and it's this beauty over here. And I'm going to share some stories with you about when he was making them, because I was in constant communication with him. And so I have to share with you that first and foremost, you might see some dings on this. You might see some changes in the mirror finish, only because when I got them in 2005, I used them. I used them all the time, not only in training, but sometimes to cut, sometimes to chop or slice, some sort of material, just so that I stay familiar with the knife. This was a piece of advice that I got from Bill. He said you have to move with them every day because of the familiarity that you need with the tool. Weapons training is very different from basic martial art training, empty hand training, because you need to be familiar with the tool first. So this is the right hand one. You can see some of the discoloration from the use, but note the Spanish notch, note the sharpened false edge, the devil's horn guard, and these unique notches over here. And he said that these are here so that I will know specifically how to index it once I grab it, even in the dark. So I would know which one was which. This one is slightly wider than the one on the left. You can see how they are both slightly what this one, the one on the right, the righty one, is ever so slightly wider than this one on the left. He had a very unique theory about righty-lefty Bagwell Bowies. Just as a reminder that Bill Bagwell is not just a knife maker or a Bowie knife maker, he is also a Bowie Knife Combatives expert. So he viewed Bowie knives, especially the ones that he made, as combat tools. So they are works of art, they honor the tradition of the Bowie knife, but they are also dedicated weapons of war, because that's what the original Bowie knife was to begin with. Any questions on that, you can take a look at any of the videos in my series about the Bowie knife. So my own so I'm gonna paraphrase some of his words when it comes to describing this righty one, and then I'm going to add some of my own details as I've matured as a practitioner and also expanded my my blade practices all the way up to Japanese swordsmanship. In his words, this blade is what he called, this is the shock and awe blade. This is the shock and awe of the two. And what he meant by that is that if I'm working with it as righty-lefty, the righty is the one that does the snap cuts and possibly some back cuts. Possibly some back cuts along the midline. He said that, again, Bowie Knife Combatives practice, this is the one that actually penetrates center line and takes care of any lead tools. But it was the left one, if you see that it is narrower, it is the left one that he called the sniper. This is the one where the Bowie back cut comes from field of vision where it is imperceptible. So this was a very interesting design concept. Now, my own comments on why he designed it the way he did. The one thing that I've noticed about this particular blade, it's very imperceptible on this blade, but it is also thicker. It is ever so slightly thicker out of all the Bowie knives that I have along the edge. In Japanese terms, this is called niku, N-I-K-U. So niku means that thickness is what allows the blade to, and again, this is Japanese warfare, during the Sengoku period, when the samurai sword, purpose-driven, was used to not just cut through flesh and bone, but also be able to fight samurai who were in full armor. So so niku is a very important feature of the Japanese sword, because the more niku, meaning the thicker it is, the more it is capable of not just cutting and slashing, but also the ability to penetrate armor upon slashing. This is why I think he called it the shock and awe of the righty-lefty Bowie. Once again, dog bone makes it very comfortable. So when I practice with this Bowie, the first time I worked with this one, I ordered it, it was around 2003. And in 2003, I'm about 215, 220 pounds now, but in 2003, I hadn't started any powerlifting. I was primarily doing Jeet Kune Do, Savate, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Filipino martial arts, and of course my beloved Bowie Combatives. And I was competing in Jiu-Jitsu at the time, so I was competing in the 150, 158 lightweight division. So I was around 158. So when I first held this, it felt not, I wouldn't say heavy, but it had a tendency to run away with me. And I remember calling him about it. I said, Bill, I don't know if I can handle it. And he said, no, I built it to your specs. And I said, well, but why does it feel like it's running away from me? And he said, it's designed to run away from you because when you do that back cut, it goes into the next move. That insight changed my whole view of not just how Bowie knives work, but how any blade works and how any blade I have chosen since. That's been my criteria. I chose his criteria. I adopted it, meaning that's the very definition of a lively blade. So this righty blade, when I do a snap cut, a thrust, a back cut, or a reversal with it, now that I've grown, become familiar with it, when I do a back cut, it doesn't run away with me anymore. My body has a tendency to track it so that I can anticipate its next move. This is so exquisitely designed as a true shock and awe righty Bowie that it beautifully complements the lefty Bowie. And this lefty one is the most interesting of all the Bowie knives I have ever seen, because this tells me, this displays just how much the man was a true master of his art. Because I don't know if you can notice this. I did, but when I spoke to him over the phone, he had a great way of explaining it. I want you to take a look at this. Do you notice that the edge turns slightly to the left? Maybe about a good 10 degrees or so. It's not completely straight. I thought the man had made a mistake. I really thought he had made a mistake. But let's go back a little bit to what he was talking about in terms of sniping and also customization in terms of that left shoulder drop. What he said was that if you're working righty lefty, what you think is going to be straight with your left arm or your left hand is going to be deviated because of that left shoulder drop by a few degrees. So if you're going to do any sort of slashing with it, it's not going to be completely straight. So he adjusted it accordingly. I was so shocked by the attention to detail. And at the time, I did not own any custom suits. But when I started getting into custom suits, full transparency, when you start going from 158 to 180 to 220, after a while your suit maker is going to go, okay, we're going to need to customize some of these things. But that's what happened when I got my first custom suits. They said, you have a left shoulder drop, and my brain went straight to the master, and I said, wow. So it's not completely straight. This is the sniper of the two. So the righty one is shock and awe. This one is the sniper. So when it back cuts, he said that this is gonna go, both of them actually, he said they're just designed to go through the target. And I found that that's the case when I've been testing them on soft targets. But they're designed relatively similarly, except that this is narrower and it has less of a niku, much less of a niku, because it's not the shock and awe. It requires a lot of precision and targeting when working with it. With my righty, lefty Bowie knives, it is always with that complete strategy and mindset of, this is shock and awe. This is meant to occupy center line. This is meant to move him in the direction that I want, and that direction that I want is always going to be towards the sniper to finish the engagement. A brace of Bowies indeed from the master, Bill Bagwell. Now, somewhere along my journey, I do want to show you the Ontario Bagwells. Now, what is the difference? You may be wondering, well, what is the difference between a production Bowie and a custom Bowie, and I covered this in one of my other episodes. This one is really super fast. And if you're looking at it outside of just the coffin handle, it is practically the spitting image of the custom Bagwells. These are so well made by Ontario. That collaboration was so successful. It was a runaway hit for Ontario. They made a series of them, smaller Bowies, the Gambler, all of those great things, but I just stuck with the Bagwell Hell's Bells to the point where what I ended up doing here is I ended up getting a second one, had the handle customized, and made an attempt to have this blued. But this all but confirmed that the fact that it didn't completely turn blue, that it is not made of carbon steel, probably 440C. That's the conclusion that the knife maker came to. Not Bill Bagwell. This one is very different. But these two knives, very sharp, very fast, but they're not customized. And because they're not customized, they don't move the way the others move. And what I mean by that is that they don't necessarily, if I do a back cut this way and it stops, versus a custom Bagwell, where if I take out the righty Bagwell, good old shock and awe, when I do a back cut this way, I already know, you see how he likes to flip over and he's already gonna bounce forward, so I know my body's gonna follow him next. I know he'll follow. So it's a very, very minor difference, and it's something that requires feel and customization and working with a master like Bill Bagwell to really experience. It's one of the main reasons why I got the custom Bagwells to begin with, because I wanted to understand the work of a master who was not just one of the greatest knife makers, American knife makers, but possibly the greatest Bowie maker that ever lived. But he was also a combatives instructor. So his insights into the Bowie and how he created it, totally invaluable. So now I'm going to move on to the final custom Bagwell that I have. This is the Damascus Bowie. When I spoke to Bill about this, I believe this was around 2007. So I believe this was around 2007, 2008. And by that time, I was about 184 pounds. And I spoke to him and I said, well, I'm going to want a 12-inch blade. He said, no, you're not going to want a 12-inch blade. I said, why is that? I can lift more. I'm powerlifting. I'm in a better place. And he said, this is not about muscular force. This is about leverage. You may be heavier, but your skeleton didn't change, did it? I did a little bit of a Bill Bagwell there. But I just remember the phrase. He said, your skeleton didn't grow, meaning your levers didn't change. Again, another very powerful insight into how the man thought. So, all right, 11 inches it is. Fine, we'll stick to the 11 inches. So, without further ado, this is the absolute beauty. And I asked for stag, and I'm very happy that he gave it this beautiful ergonomic gun handle over here, kind of pistol handle. So really super ergonomic. So when I place my hand here, he designed it because when you're working with Damascus Bowies tend to be a little heavier, but really scary sharp. So this one, he made it so that it's almost a true V-taper on the edge, meaning it's narrow, but because of the combination of hard and soft carbon, it can withstand more shock, and it is probably 5 times sharper. It is really scary sharp. It goes through targets like cardboard, double cardboard, triple cardboard, like paper. It's really terrifyingly sharp. But look at the exquisiteness of it, the beauty of it, and note also that he didn't have to make it so wide. This is not the shock and awe. This is, in my opinion, the true definition of the art of Bill Bagwell, in that he was able to create such a magnificently designed work of art, honoring the tradition of the Bowie, but at the same time, in terms of design, but also in terms of its purpose. This is a true purpose-driven, hyper-intentional weapon. And some things I will say about this one, this beautiful Damascus Bagwell, is that it is the lightest and the most well-balanced of the entire collection. She's the one that I practice with the most. So I want to share a story with you about Bill. Bill Bagwell, when he sent me the knives in different years, but it wasn't until he sent me the Damascus Bagwell. It gave me a little insight into the man. He said, "Don't name your knives. Don't name your knives." Okay, that's pretty cool. I can get with that, sir. And he said, "They will tell you their names." That blew me away, because naming your blades or having your blade tell you their name, this is something that comes from Filipino tradition, meaning we believe that there's a spirit in the blade. And this also comes from Japanese tradition, where they also name their samurai swords. They treat them like part of the family. So when he said this to me, I knew that he knew that I understood what he meant. This was not just a blade. He is giving me a work of art to become a part of the family that is coming home to a home where they would be taken care of. Because this beautiful Damascus Bagwell here is meant to not just take care of the home in terms of the energy, in terms of the aesthetic, but it is also a protector. And so I welcome her into my home. So beautiful, exquisite piece of art. And I must say that I am very proud to have this collection of Bagwell Bowies, custom and production. I'm very excited to share it with you. Just a few parting thoughts on this. I feel very blessed to have learned as much as I have from Bill in my interactions with him, not just about his work, his art, but also his view of Bowie Knife Combatives, and most of all, to be a recipient of these priceless works of art that are truly purpose-driven. I've learned a lot from them, and I continue to learn from them. And to me, the greatest value of these custom Bagwells, especially as a Bowie Knife Combatives practitioner, but also as a martial artist in general, is that these tools actually are far more instructive in nature, and so it goes back to something that I believed, and he reaffirmed when we would speak. The tool itself teaches you how to move. We don't impose ourselves onto the weapon. It is the weapon that teaches us not only how to move with the weapon, but also how to move with ourselves. I'm going to paraphrase this. It's very similar to what Dojin Zenji said, the famous 12th century Buddhist monk. And I'm going to paraphrase this. He said that if we impose ourselves onto nature, this is called delusion. But if we allow nature to rise to the surface, this is called enlightenment. So my process with these custom Bagwells is that as we move with each other, as we continue this journey together, raises to the surface the nature of the art, the nature of the weapon, the nature of the practitioner, and most of all, the nature of the warrior spirit that is within me and is within all of us to discover. That to me is the journey and the process of a martial artist and a warrior. I'm very grateful to all of you for supporting this channel, and I'm very grateful to all of you for allowing me to share my journey with these wonderful Bagwell Bowies. Thank you very much. I hope you found this episode enjoyable and informative. Stay tuned, more videos to come.